You're under arrest, Reno.
You talking to me, Marshal?
Your name's Reno, isn't it?
All right, Marshal, what do you say I done?
You don't remember me, do you?
No.
When you hang a man, you better look at him. Don't go for that gun, Reno. I need you alive.
This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag.
You know who else are Freemasons? Henry Seymour and William Heston.
Which are who?
Oh, Brian, you know them. The guys who made Quaker Oats.
Were they?
Yeah, they were both Freemasons. Do you know why? Do you know why they named it Quaker Oats? Because neither of them were actually Quakers.
No.
Brian, is just because it was a symbol of good quality and honest value.
So they were named Quaker Oats just because
the Quakers were
they
dope.
figured if they use that, they immediately have some cachet.
They basically were like, the Quakers got this like
image.
They've got this reputation of being solid, badass, blah, blah. So we're going to steal it.
All right, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Right on. We're getting right back into the book. I think this is episode 7, 8, something like that, 6. I don't know. You guys have been following along. Hopefully, if you haven't, go back and check out the earlier episodes. We're reviewing the book, Boone, a biography written by Robert Morgan. I highly recommend the book. We're kind of jumping through it, finding kind of the relevant points, but it's well worth the read. Get it on Audible if you want to. I listened to this book years ago, then went back and read it as I am wont to do, and then I underlined a lot of things, so I can't recommend it enough. But getting into the book, we're going to jump ahead now to the 1750s and 60s, and the 60s through the 70s. Okay, real quick, laying some context down. America was discovered in 1492. Christopher Columbus. You could say 1500 or so. I should say America was discovered by Christopher Columbus in 1500. Otherwise, some historian nut job's going to come along and say, so all kinds of people discovered America. Yes, we're talking about when Columbus did, which precipitated the discovery of the New World and all of Europe migrating here over the next few hundred years. Okay, so 1500, roughly, 1492, 1500, that's when Columbus discovered the Americas. When did Squire Boone, Daniel Boone's father, come to America? Because he was born, raised in England. Mm-hmm. What year did he come to America?
1717.
Yes, it's an easy date to remember.
It is an easy date to remember.
1717 is when Daniel Boone's father, named Squire Boone, came to the United States. Okay? Then, so roughly, what is that? 1600, 200 years after Columbus? A lot of time when it went on during that window. Further context. When was Boone born?
1734.
1734. Yes. So in 1750, he would have been 16 years old. And in 1760, he would have been 26 years old. Okay. Now, from the time he was 16 to 26, right? That's that period between 1750 and 1760. Indian hostilities on the Yadkin got a little bit intense during that time. And this was also the 7 Years' War, or is it the 8 Years' War? The French and French and Indian War, where the British Empire, in cahoots with like the Iroquois, were battling the French in cahoots with the Hurons and their group of Indians at that time. And Last of the Mohicans, written by James Fenimore Cooper.
Is it bad that in my head I just replaced French Indian War with The Last of the Mohicans in my head? Like, they're interchangeable.
It's not necessarily bad. That is a reference point. It is a cultural iconic movie that it's a cultural, reference
It's
for you
Daniel
that puts
Day-Lewis.
that puts things in perspective, right? Like it kind of helps you understand the time frame, the dress, the politics, the clashing of worlds from the native people working with the French and the British, working with the colonialists, and on and on, the settlers. And so that's your time frame. So we're in that time frame, okay? And Daniel Boone is 16 years old. And in the 1750s to the 1760s, there's a lot of Indian hostilities in that 10-year window. There's also a lot of the whole war as well. Because wasn't it 1755 was the French and Indian War? Look that up real quick just so we can get those dates.
That was 1750.
1756 to 59, I think. Yeah, I think we're right in that window. War of the 1750s and 60s. Mm-hmm. So we're right in that window, okay? So he's 16, going on 26 in this 10-year window. Now, remember, he joined the British Empire forces, and he did a march. This was in our last episode, I think, or the one before.
Yeah.
And he's just driving the horses. He's a teamster. And
he's a blacksmith with the army?
And a blacksmith. He's a teamster and a blacksmith. So he drives the wagons and stuff, and he hauls goods, and he's a truck driver.
But they got jumped, right? And he was like, peace.
Yeah, everyone got kind of jumped by the French, the Indians in an ambush.
A total rout, right?
Because the dude for the British Empire was arrogant and cocky and said, he's going to whoop the French and the Indians, no problem. But then they got their butts kicked. And all these people from the period were like, yeah, the settlers kicked ass. The British army ran like cowards. They were pathetic. So, contrary to how arrogant the British were about their army, turned out to be that they were pretty pathetic. Anyway, he runs and escapes and goes back to his family. Daniel Boone does, and gets away, doesn't get killed. And George Washington was there, and he ran away too. Like everyone ran away.
It was like a total rout, right?
Yeah.
Like they basically just their ranks just broke.
So it says it wasn't uncommon. It was pretty common during the 1750s and 60s for the Boone family and Daniel Boone to retreat to the forts that were around. Like you're in a settler community, picture that. And then, Indians come in and murder some people. And we're going to get into this too. The white murderers were as bad or worse than the Indians. So you have white outlaws and gangs as well. They murder somebody and things get a little hot, and usually it's tit for tat. So if you kill some Indians, they come and kill some settlers. And so, it's not uncommon for these families to run to a fort and seek refuge in a military fort and just live out a few months until things settle down and go back to their homes. Sometimes they would just move 100 miles, 50 miles back to, let's say, or further, back to 2 states over, back to where they started before they go back out into the wilds again. Make sense? So during this time, it's not uncommon. Now, white robbers were often worse than the Indians. And I'll read this here. It says, closer to home on the Yadkin, gangs of white outlaws preyed on the scattered farms, stealing and killing and sometimes kidnapping women and girls. Spreading rumors of an Indian attack, these outlaws plundered farms after the settlers had hurried to forts or hidden in the woods. So you have these deadbeat white dudes out there, or I should say Europeans or colonial settlers. They would take advantage of those that were out there settlers, especially when they abandoned their homes. And they could blame it on Indians, And it says, an especially notorious gang of horse thieves and robbers was active near the Yadkin. Once they kidnapped a young girl, and her father organized a posse of more than 40 men to search for her. As the Minutemen rode into the woods, they met the girl running out. Her captors had gotten drunk and begun to fight about who would take his pleasure with her first. She led the rescuers back to the camp, where 3 men as well as women and children were seized. The leader of the outlaws escaped, but 3 of his cohorts were taken back to Salisbury to be tried and hanged. The rumor was that these outlaw gangs planned to lead the French and their Indian allies to the settlements in the backcountry. The gangs were hated as much for their suspected treachery as for their stealing. Once a nearby farmer was discovered with a cache of stolen goods. Persuaded by a little torture, he confessed and led the sheriff and his posse to the outlaw lair in the woods. The leaders were captured and hanged, but the farmer was later murdered for his betrayal. He turned in his buddies. That's just a gang, you know. It's the mob. They were out there stealing and plundering and raping, and he got caught with crap in his barn, and then a little bit of torture and threatens, and he led them to where the outlaws were. They caught those guys, hung them all. He didn't get hung, but he got murdered for turning in the outlaws. So they're still outlaws. I mean, live by the sword, die by the sword. The Yadkin was the lawless West of its time, both literally and figuratively. A missionary traveling in the Yadkin region in this period wrote, quote, "The people about here are wild." So,
Hey.
in this case, the conflict with the Indians was more often than not started by the whites. It says Indians were sometimes attacked and killed seemingly at random. A group of Cherokees in May 1758 stole some wandering horses in far southwestern Virginia, not thinking it was all that wrong, as they saw it often done by the whites. The owner of the horses, forming a posse, pursued the Indians and killed 12 or 15 of them. The relatives of the dead Indians vowed revenge, and in the fall of 1759, about a year later, the Cherokees began attacking the settlements of North Carolina more consistently. It says that enraged because British soldiers had raped several Cherokee women and scalped and murdered braves, the war chief overrode like the peace treaties and so on and all that. In this time period, he would have been 16 to 20 to 22 to 25. This is Boone's formative years, right? And during this time, he joins up here and there with different posses, and he goes out and kind of does what
Goes out there and regulates
what the community needs. So that's kind of the background for that, right? And here's the deal. With mother and daughter doing well, because they had left, because it got a little too hot, they left their settlement and they moved back into the city. So they're in the city now. They've been there for quite a while. He's just working odd jobs, doing 1750s kind of work, 1760s kind of work. And it says that with mother and daughter doing well, Boone left for North Carolina because it was time for fall hunting in the beginning of trapping season. In all his long life, Daniel never missed a hunt if he could help it, even if the Indians were on the warpath, and later, even if he was supposedly sitting for a session of the Virginia legislature.
You're running for office, gotta go for a hunt.
Yeah, so he did serve in office, but he just hunting was first, number one. Everything else got dropped to go hunting. Some of us can relate to that, I suppose. It is likely that Boone also rejoined the Waddell militia the next spring after the hunt was over and the hides and furs sold. So he would join the militia, the local militia. All the men kind of did, to protect the cities and to regulate the area. But again, he would leave, go hunting, and then come back, and after he trapped and made all his money and stuff and did what he did, he'd come back, and then he would go back to the other work in the meantime until it was trapping season again. Trapping hunting season. So, in 1760, Waddell's forces invaded several Cherokee towns and the Little Tennessee River. On the Little Tennessee River. In a bloody campaign, the militia murdered and scalped women as well as men. On November 19, 1761, the Cherokees agreed to peace terms at the Long Island of the Holston, and things were quieter in the Carolina backcountry for a while. We're going to paint a little picture. You know how we kind of painted a picture for in an earlier episode what it was like between the people of the forest, for the native people versus the colonialists, and how much they more or less adopted each other's ways, dressed like each other. They were more intermingled and peaceful, especially the first couple hundred years that Americans and white people and Indians came together. It was actually quite a peaceful time in that moment. Now, remember how we said by 1650, a colonialist said something to the effect of 7 out of 8 7 out of 8, which would be about 85% of the Indian population had died from diseases
and stuff. Yeah.
So that would have happened rapidly and pretty intensely. The diseases would have, whipped through the population of the Indians and killed them all. Picture that like 8.5 people out of 10, 1.5 people survive out of 10.
Yeah. You have this mass
2 out of
extinction,
20 people.
and then all these white people started showing up. It's not like you exactly have the population to be messing around with.
Yeah. And
it's not,
it's not like the white people saw the extinction happen.
It had kind of before they
kind of like, they were kind of aware of it. It sounds like some, but in large part, people just assumed the people that were here was the number of people that were here. But the fact of the matter was actually, 90% of the population almost had died, somewhere in the early parts of the transmission of those diseases to the population. So by the time, Boone gets there, it's just the population that is, and a lot of those people are 100 years after. A lot of the native people, that's 100 years after their whole population got wiped out, so, and now they have immunity, those that have survived. And so they are more resilient to diseases. It took effect. It did what it did. And, you wonder what it would have been like had the population of native people in America not been eliminated by 80% by the time settlers even showed up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 10% of the population is now what you have to deal with, and it was already a struggle. Imagine if you had the population's pre-disease of the native people. You could argue that maybe America is not what it is today. That the settlers all just got wiped out. Period, and they never got a foothold here.
Well,
till England and France just moved on to other greener pastures. Like, I don't think so. I think their technology was just so advanced that they could make a coordinated strike, but it could be a lot different. History could be a lot different if not for those little viruses and bacterias that wreak so much havoc. I think I heard Stephen Ranella write one time, it's not the lions and the tigers and the bears that are probably going to kill me. It's the viruses and the bugs and the microscopic things I can't see that are going to kill me someday. How true is that? You know what I mean?
I'd be dead already.
Like, we're all worried about getting eaten by a grizzly bear, but really you're more likely to get blood poisoning and die, or appendicitis in the mountains, not make it back or something.
An infected tooth.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're going to paint a picture now for what it was like, especially for women, when it comes to domestic duties, to live on the frontier. It is hard for us in the 21st century to imagine a wife's burden on the frontier when her husband was away hunting. Gathering fodder, threshing wheat and rye, carrying grain to mill, and shucking corn was the heavy work that fell to women. And when there was no heavy work to be done outside, they spun thread from wool or flax, wove cloth, and tanned buckskin. Women on the frontier did all the scrubbing and scouring and washing. There were always dirty diapers and underclothes, nightclothes, and petticoats. With dirt floors and mud in the yard, smoke and ashes from the fireplace, sweat in the summertime, outer clothes needed laundering also. A woman had to gather enough wood to heat water in an iron washpot, water that had to be carried from a spring or stream or well. Once the fire was going on, the pot steaming, the woman soaked the clothes and scrubbed them on washboard or beat them with a stick. The fabric was wrung out by hand and rinsed in cold water and wrung out once more. Washed clothes were draped over bushes, hung from limbs, or strung on cords to dry. The only soap was that made herself from fat and lye. To this end, she scraped ashes out of the fireplace and piled them in wooden ash hoppers, V-shaped troughs with a crack at the bottom. Straw or grass in the trough acted as a strainer. When the hopper was full, she poured water over the ashes, and the liquid that leached through the hopper was lye. The lye was boiled in a large kettle until it was thick enough to float an egg. The woman saved fat from her cooking and the dripping of meat and bear bacon. When the fatty oils were mixed with lye, the alkali in the lye acted on the fat to make the brew. Soap in form of light curds floated to the surface of the alcohol. With salt added to the brew, soap in the form of light curds floated to the surface of the alcohol. When the liquid was, this is a regular chemistry, lesson here. When the liquid was drained off and the curds washed with a salt solution, the mixture was allowed to settle. The upper layer, as it hardened, was the pure soap called settled soap, which could be chipped or flaked or broken into bars. For tanning hides, women gathered oak bark in late winter when it was full of sap and cut it up and pounded it so the tannic acid seeped out into a water-filled trough. Dude, the idea of cutting wood in late winter and harvesting all that, it's a pain in the butt, man.
The idea of being outside in late winter. I feel like we picked the wrong state to live. There's snow outside.
Yeah.
Not about that life.
When the solution was strong enough, hides were soaked for at least a month for tanning hides. Deer hides were softened by drawing them back and forth across a straking board in a process called graining. Indian women often soaked deer skins in dung and urine to make them soft. Alcohol and ammonia.
You ever seen the pictures they have of the moccasin circles kind of deal they would make? So the Native Americans, they would take turns chewing on the edges of the moccasin skins to make them softer. And you would just see like all these old ladies like gnawing on leather to make it supple.
Wow. We know little about the sanitary facilities of cabins, forts, and stations. Early accounts do not mention such things. The outhouse, as we know it, had not been invented at this time. Most likely, settlers just went out into the woods or used a chamber pot at night if they had one. But a fort where upward of 100 people were enclosed in palisades, some kind of facility must have been a necessity. Likely it was a hut or shed constructed against the wall of a stockade, a pit in the ground, or a ditch. In hot weather, lime could be thrown in a latrine to neutralize the stench. We do know chamber pots were sometimes emptied from the blockhouses onto attacking Indians.
Ew. I mean, like, if you hear that, you know what?
That's just the insult.
If someone shoots you in the leg or something, you might keep going. You might. If someone throws a chamber pot full of poo at you, you are going home. You're done. Fight's over.
It was a great improvement when a cabin was given a puncheon floor made of logs split in two.
A what floor?
And laid flat side up. It says puncheon floor. It's basically a wood floor. You just cut the logs in half and put the flat side up so everything's flat.
Okay.
It says settlers would sprinkle fine white sand from branches onto the puncheons. When the sand got dirtied with tobacco juice, ashes, because I guess you're just spitting everywhere, mud, or dripped grease, the covering could be swept away and replaced with more clean sand.
Oh, lovely.
So it was a way to carry out the grime, is put dirt there to soak it all up, kind of like cat litter, and then sweep it all out.
Brian, were you saying they're living in a giant cat litter box in the woods?
With neither metal nor ceramics, the settlers had to rely on wooden spoons and carved bowls. William Clickenbeard, an early settler in Kentucky, told John Dabney Shane that when he and his wife married at Boonesboro, they had no spoons, dishes, or any other utensils. Luckily, William Page, who arrived in Kentucky in 1779, was a fine craftsman in wood. Noggins hollowed out of knots of trees served as cups, Poge said. Also carved piggins, small wooden pails with one stave extended upward as a handle. Or trenchers, wooden platters for serving food.
That second one sounded like almost like a ladle.
Yeah.
You see like them dipping that weird wood thing and they drink out of it? That's kind of what I'm imagining.
It's like a pot with a handle at an angle or something.
Yeah, so you can,
The preferred yard around a cabin was bare ground. Weeds and grass were cut away. Snakes were easier to spot on bare ground. And children were safer. Women tied switches together to make rough brooms called besoms, with which to sweep the ground and scoured away chicken piles and other stains with kettles of hot water splashed on the dirt. A swept yard sparkled, and when flowers and shrubs were planted at the edges, became an island of beauty and order within the threatening wilderness.
Mm. Do you know that the modern, like, grass front lawn, do you know what European country that originally hails from?
No.
It's my favorite. The French.
Really?
Yeah, the concept is, I have vast tracts of useless land. Isn't it pretty? I don't need it for anything. I'm just that rich. That's the concept of having grass for your lawn.
You know, I spent some time in Japan, and so there was a lot going on in Japan when I was, you know, Japanese garden wise. There was some beautiful landscaping and things done there that I think are some of the most incredible. But talk about like taking a more free form, chaotic sort of English garden and then putting the Japanese influence on it. It's like straitjacketed nature. Like, it's like, we're going to shape the bonsai into a specific shape over 100 years. We're going to do, like, everything's
this
meticulously.
This will be done when my great grandson is dead.
It's like, it is incredible. It is beautiful, but you can't mistake the hand of man in a Japanese garden, cultivating it and working it and it's beautiful. But then you look at more of an English garden and it's sort of like weedy and able to just sort of be more free and kind of like our gardens growing, our house growing up.
In my mind, I'm not going to get lost in a Japanese garden. I could easily get lost in the garden in my front yard.
And, so pretty wild. So we're going to get into, In Search of the Real West. This is 1760 to 1768. So we kind of just got past, you know, Daniel Boone would be 26 at this time. He'll have gone through those kind of rough periods on the Yadkin, the French and Indian War and all that kind of stuff. Last Mohican's time frame, right? Now we're moving into 1760. Boone's 26 years old. We're going to jump into that. Okay. Between 1760 and 69, Daniel Boone, still a young man, was attempting to define himself. It is an odd fact that those who accomplish the most often spend years fumbling and stumbling to find what it is they can achieve. The first half of a life may be given to experiment, trial and error, failure after failure. If Boone had a sense of his destiny at the time, it was frustrated again and again by false starts, dead ends, detours, and digressions. While his fame as a hunter grew, his debts also grew. Though he seemed to have had a sense of his calling from his youth, he must have suffered serious doubts about the exact nature of the call, his purpose, and his future. The decade of the 60s could be called a time of wandering in the wilderness for Boone in a metaphoric as well as a literal sense. It might be said he was auditioning for parts in the unfolding story of his life and times. It's going to be a pretty, in some ways, idyllic time for Daniel Boone because you're 26 years old. So between 26 and 36, since I've been there, done that, it's really a building phase. It's when I had, I started my first kid came along somewhere in that window pretty quick after I turned 27, maybe. I started to have the family, but I started to, become skilled at my career paths. I had finished a lot of schooling. Before that, I had just sort of kicked around and did lots of stuff. Then I started to be like, what do I want to do with my life? You know, and from, I'd say 26 to 36, somewhere in there, 33, I did spend a lot of time getting out into the mountains and hunting in a way I hadn't earlier. So this is a formative window here. They say that your 20s are for just growing up and goofing off, and your 30s is kind of like a building phase and, or wandering phase, and your 40s are a building phase. You know, and you go through these different decades in life where your values and priorities kind of shift a little bit, partly to do with, I think, your youth, right? So anyway, let's get into this. It says, in Rowan County's minutes, Court of Pleas and Quarter Sessions, the following entry can be found. Quote, a deed of gift from Squire Boone and Sarah, his wife, to Daniel Boone, his son, for 640 acres of land, 18th day of October, 1759. Proved by Thomas Banfield. Squire apparently gave two of his married sons each a square mile of land. And while Daniel may have farmed on that property, it appears he and Rebecca continued to live in the cabin on Sugar Creek. With that much land of his own, he may have been expected to give up hunting and settle down to a farming life, but nothing could have been further from his plans. Around 1760, Boone began to go on longer and longer hunts into the Blue Ridge Mountains to the north and west of the Yadkin to the valleys beyond the Blue Ridge. It was Cherokee country, and hunters had to be discreet, never calling attention to themselves, building small campfires in hidden coves, behind rocks and logs, leaving little evidence they had been there. The ideal was to slip into the valley as silent and unseen as an Indian, extract the hides and bear meat, beaver and mink and otter pelts, and withdraw again. The best hunting was always on Indian land, and Boone became an expert at infiltrating, spying, and harvesting the bounty there. Can you imagine? I've had this conversation with Ryan so many times because we're out hunting. Can you imagine if while you were out hunting, you were also being hunted by two-legged predators, like by other human beings? So the whole time you're out, the way you move, the way you hunt has to be totally like you're sticking to cover and hiding and secretive. It's not getting skylined, moving in a way that you could be hunted down by native people for encroaching on their land or hunting their resources. Like the way you're going to start a fire, stay warm, find a cave, the way you're going to operate being so different, more military style, right? Like you're living off the land, but you're in hostile territory. Totally different animal. Talk about adding an element of intensity to a hunt. Like
an element of no thank you. I'm good.
I mean, it's he must have just felt so, in one sense, capable, right? Just capable, but in being going undetected. That level of uncanny ability to stay alive. Same thing with Jeremiah Johnson, right? Like that whole story, right? Like mountain men in general being able to do the same thing. So crazy the way that works. But then, just the idea of always looking over your back, going to sleep in a different way, moving about in a different way, keeping your traps hidden, all that stuff, man.
And it's not just from like regular people. It's from Indians, like badass woodsmen.
Yep. And warriors.
So you got to be the woodsman of woodsmans.
Although I would say this, I don't think we give adequate appreciation to the abilities of the settlers as well. We tend to romanticize the ability of Indians to navigate the woods and to live off the land. But people like Boone and other settlers who also lived on the edge of the frontier were as capable or more. Given the fact that they had they knew that world that the natives knew, but they also brought with them things like gunsmithing and firearms and, modern technology that we don't think is so modern now, but back then revolutionary, just the steel traps alone. It says, according to one account, the Cherokees found Boone's tracks one day in the region that would later be Washington County, Tennessee. Discovering he was being followed, he turned away from his camp and ducked behind a waterfall. Concealed by the curtain of water, he waited as the Indians puzzled over his tracks that disappeared into the creek and never emerged. They decided he had been turned into a ghost that haunted the place, and they fled the scene. The creek was later named Boone Creek, and the falls, Boone Falls.
That's cool.
Beyond the Blue Ridge were the Alleghenies, called the Unakas by the Cherokees, meaning white mountains, because of the haze over the peaks much of the year. Later they would be called the Smokies. For a hunter in the 1760s who was willing to risk the danger from Cherokees and roving bands of Chickasaws, the Shawnees from north of the Ohio, the mountains offered unlimited opportunities for taking furs and hides for meat and adventure and sheer beauty. Quote, I have often heard father speak of hunting in the Smoky, Brushy, and Little Mountains, and also Pilot Mountain, Nathan Boone said. While hunting in and passing over these mountains, he would never consider he had discovered the real West, which was Kentucky. It's so funny that the real West is Kentucky.
Yeah.
And given what we know now. But think about how it's the West. The West is the untouched. By then, Boone had become a commercial hunter. The idea was to return from these long hunts with a pack horse carrying more than 100 deer hides or 200 or 300 beaver pelts, worth enough to sustain a family for a year, and buy a new rifle, powder, lead, steel traps, and a horse.
Dang.
A beaver skin was a unit of value, same as a pound of sterling or a silver dollar. But for Boone and many of the men he knew, these long hunts were from the beginning much more than a business. They were voyages of exploration and discovery. The hunters were driven by a craving and curiosity, a lust for wonder and wandering. The wilderness was like a beautiful woman that must be pursued and loved, and it is likely the danger was part of the attraction. A wilderness without Indians would seem bland, hardly a wilderness at all, and Boone may have sensed even then that when the Indians were gone from a region, the game would soon be gone also. Boone sought oneness with the wilderness as a mystic seeks union with the creator or a lover yearns to merge with the beloved. The feminist critic Annette Kolodny has described Boone's passion for the wilderness as a male fantasy of, quote, privatized erotic mastery. The isolate woodland son enjoying a pre-sexual but nonetheless eroticized intimacy within the embraces of the American forest. Okay, feminists suck. Kolodny goes on to distinguish the desire of men for wildness and exploitation of the virgin wild from the desire of women for a home. That's one way of putting it. I do agree that women tend to want to have safety and security, a place to call home, stability, and men crave a little more on some adventure, some danger to explore and to see things, and they balance each other out when they come together, right? What I don't like about the way Annette describes this is because she attributes the wrong motives to it. People are not just single in their motives. Mm-hmm. People will say to me, why do you hunt? And I can say, I hunt for conservation. Well, it wouldn't be untrue. Mm-hmm. I do hunt because I know that it helps conserve wildlife in various ways, whether it's from the tags and licenses that I purchase that are then used to fund habitat and wildlife management, or whether through conservation efforts, I take out certain predators legally, harvest those, or I manage wildlife populations as a member of the hunting community who goes out and takes game out of the pool. I hunt bears, which I eat and consume and leverage as a resource. All of those things. Maybe I hunt because I want to do what I feel is better for the environment and better for animals, what I think is more ethical, meaning I don't like mass agriculture, monocultured crops. I don't like factory farming, right? So I don't want to contribute to that. So I want to go out and I want to get my own wild game. Maybe it's for health reasons. I just don't want to eat animals that have been injected with hormones, that have been injected with tons of antibiotics, that live in squalor, that maybe eat garbage, and then you are what you eat, and then you eat a chicken that's been fed soybeans the whole time, or whatever, or or more likely,
corn,
cow brains, or something, or each other, cannibalist, like chicken parts that they just refeed to chickens. So there's all sorts of things that could be maybe that, or maybe I want to go out and hunt because there's a thrill in it. And there's like something primal in my DNA that turns on, that I feel more alive when I'm out there going after an animal. Or maybe I do it because I want the praise of other hunters in my community to look up to me, or for family or friends to admire me for something that I did that is difficult. Or maybe I do it because I know how challenging it is to harvest an animal in the wild, and I need to feel that challenge. I need to fail a lot, but finally break through to do that thing. Like, as human beings, we just want to be challenged. We want to overcome. And hunting is a primal activity that gives us the opportunity to be human. Maybe it's because I truly love the outdoors and I want to live in it and feel it and I want to understand more about animals. And one of the ways to learn more about nature is to try to hunt an elusive animal, right? Maybe there's all these motives to it, right? Some shallow, some more pure. And hunting is complex in the sense that it encompasses all those things. But if I were to just write, hunters go out to kill because they like killing, that's one reason, perhaps. Give the devil his due. Maybe there are hunters who feel that way. But that's not the main reason. And there's not just one reason why we hunt. Mm-hmm. There's so many. And it's much more nuanced and complex. What I don't like about Annette's feminist approach is she's saying that Boone likes to go out and conquer things in his male fantasy of mastering and privatizing.
I wonder if you asked Boone if he would ever use the words, "I conquered the wilderness." I just don't see that being a word he's going to attribute to what he's doing.
The woodland sunned, on his own, isolated, enjoying a pre-sexual but nonetheless eroticized intimacy with the embraces of the American forest. What the hell is she even saying?
Bro,
why is it all sexualized?
You read that once before, and I was really confused. I've never been eroticized by being in the woods.
But it's this, I'm not saying that there isn't some element of these more shallow reasons for why human beings do what they do. Mm-hmm. But there's also noble reasons. You know, the other day, this is a side note, okay, I think it ties in. Mr. Beast, YouTuber, mm-hmm. right? He goes out and he gets 1,000 people their vision back because they have, $1,000 surgery or something?
It's a simple surgery. It's not even $1,000. It's just access to the surgery.
And so it's a cataract surgery.
Yeah, on average, it's $1,000 US.
And once you have the surgery, your vision's 100% like perfect again.
For the rest of your life.
But you're mostly blind without the surgery. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Beast has a YouTube channel where he does nice things for people, philanthropy, gives away stuff. And tons of people love to see him change people's lives by giving money away.
It's a nerdy spectacle. Little chipmunk throwing out money. What's not to like?
It's a spectacle. So people go and they watch it because they want to see this thing happen. And then he makes more money, in which then he can go back and do more of this cool stuff for people. Mm-hmm. And in this video, he teaches you about the surgery, eyesight, how it works. It's very educational, but also you get to see these people be like, he just gives away 10 grand here, money there.
Yeah, another guy was like having some problems or whatever. He's like, "Oh, would 10 grand fix that?" And he just hands him a 10 grand.
Exactly.
You know, and unplanned, on top of just curing the man's eyesight.
Right. And people lost their minds over this and said it was disgusting. It was a horrible behavior, that he's exploiting poor people in their situation and all this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at it going,
why can't I get exploited like that?
Yeah, but you're looking at it and and I'm thinking to myself, isn't this how it should work, right? Like, perhaps there is a part of him that likes just being praised. Oh, you're such a nice person. And maybe his motives are kind of shallow. They're more egotistical. Then there's motives where he like genuinely wants to help someone that's in need, and he just feels, and it's mixed. It's never just one motive. And then he goes out, and because other human beings like to watch other people, a warm-hearted story, a positive story, much better than the typical story told in Hollywood today. And then you get to see that people love it, and they donate money, participate, buy things from his channel because it gets more traffic, which enables him to then go out and do this again for more people. And we're hating on that whole process. It's like, but there's people want to attribute, it's back to these motives. They want to attribute, and we as hunters, I'm a hunter, you're a hunter, coming from that perspective, it being that hunting is such a big part of my life. That's one of the things that bothers me a lot is I do take a photo of the deer that I just killed, and I'm pretty damn proud of it. And I share that. People look on that and they think he just wants the praise of other men, or he just is gloating in the life he killed for some toxic masculinity reason. And it's like, there's motives attributed to what I do. And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect person that doesn't have motives I'm trying to squash. I do. But the majority of why I do what I do has far little to do with the more cynical reasons. That's what I think. It's always a constant check.
Yeah.
You know, but this is my thing with this whole thing about Boone and his love of the forest. I don't like boiling it down to such a petty and but she does go on to say she distinguished the desire of men for wildness and exploitation of the virgin from the desire of women to have a home. It's like women have these pure reasons for why they want what they want, but men, they desire wildness and exploitation of the virgin. I don't like the word exploitation, you know, but
Followed up by virgin.
but yeah, followed by virgin.
Not a good string of words there.
Perhaps there's just an innate need to be in nature that all men and I think women possess. But anyway, that was a tangent. We're kind of running out of clock time here, Brent. The next little bit gets interesting. I don't want to jump into it on this episode because we'll have to stop in the middle of it. But it gets better. So we'll jump into that on the next episode. I hope you're enjoying this one. I feel like we kind of didn't get very far, but we did get through about 15 years of Boone's life up to this point. But we're going to continue on with the next episode talking about basically this period of Boone's life where he spends a good amount of time in the wilderness just for years at a time sometimes. And what that does to Rebecca being at home, wondering if he's alive or dead, what dangers he had to escape and get through because he's just out there trapping and on Indian country. It's a matter of time before some people catch him. So we're going to get into all of that on the next show. But folks, I hope you're enjoying this show. If you do, support us by liking and subscribing to the video, leaving us a comment on our YouTube channel always helps. Share it with your friends. We thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it bigger.
We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.